Hello and welcome to the After Sermon podcast, where we pick up all the bits from the cutting room floor that didn't make it into our sermons and break them down. And today we're looking at the sermon Step Out of the Boat, From Comfort to Courage. Hi, my name is Christopher, and ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat, because not only do we have Jesse Marks with us, but we also have Mr. Michael Godfrey. Guys, introduce yourselves.
Well, I'm Michael Godfrey. You haven't heard from me yet. I'm new, but you will be hearing from me soon in the next episode of After Sermon Podcast, where we'll be discussing one of my sermons.
Ooh, he's the rookie today, but from now on he will be one of the official members, I suppose. One of the official guests on the show.
Regulars. And yeah, you guys probably would know me from last week, but this time I'm bringing you the sermon, so I hope you enjoy.
Well, let's get into the recap. But just before we do, if you haven't watched Step Out of the Boat, From Comfort to Courage, which is Jesse's sermon, go to the link below and come back here later because this podcast is full of spoilers.
Alright, so let's get into your impressions. What did you think of the sermon? What did you like? Response.
First.
Awesome. Well, I really liked, to begin with, just how you sort of prefaced everything by explaining the definition of comfort zones and even giving a bit of the historical background to do with comfort zones. And I think that gives a bit of greater understanding and almost an appreciation for what comes next. And it also gives it a sense of relatability because especially a lot of the examples you gave, because I think at least we could all at least empathize with one of those examples.
I was hoping so, yeah.
Whether it was, a fear of traveling on a plane or public speaking or what have you, everyone has their comfort zones and everyone has things that they're afraid to do and afraid to go out of.
Yes.
And that's one of the most relatable things, really, that we can all share and empathize with. And I really liked how you didn't feel the need to go into a lot of different areas. You just sort of stuck with the story of Peter and him being pulled out into the water. And you don't see enough of that, really. Someone just sticking in one place, and the way that you were able to break down so much from just a few verses was really good. So I think it left a really good lasting impact, just a really good challenge to step out of our comfort zones. And I'll tell you what, it's one of those sermons that congregations not necessarily always want to hear because it's very convicting.
That's true.
But then again, I think that can also be one of the best types of sermons, and it's one of the things we need. And if we feel convicted of something, that shows that there is somewhere we can improve in our spiritual lives. So I really liked that. Mr. Godfrey, any thoughts?
Yes, I'm going to echo a lot of that. I thought that the definitions at the beginning were really, really good. I thought that it was great that we had some context and that we understood exactly what you were talking about and where the sermon was going. The structure was really clear from the beginning. I also liked how you kept in the same place in the book of Matthew the whole time, pretty much. I mean, you had verses that were here and there, but generally speaking, it was in this one section. You wanted to focus on this one passage, and that was really, really good. Because it made it easier for us to kind of understand what you were saying and to just you stuck to the point really, really well. I also liked how you brought your own personal experiences into it. Yeah. Because that made it relatable, like you were saying.
Yeah.
So overall, really good job. Really easy to understand, easy to follow, and the verses were just really, really relevant as well. Yeah. So awesome. that was good. Good job.
So once again, guys, make sure that you check out that sermon. It'll be in the link below. To Jesse's YouTube channel and to that video, so make sure you check it out and make sure you share it with people as well, because it is a really good message that needs to be heard. So
definitely worth a listen.
Make sure you give Jesse some feedback on that.
Yeah, thank you guys. Awesome.
All right. Well, let's get the ball rolling by going to our segment, the drawing board. Michael, what is the drawing board?
The drawing board is where we discuss the sources, inspirations, and goals of the sermon in order to better understand the sermon in question.
Mr. Marks, what were some of those sources that you used, or what inspired you to kind of create this idea?
Yeah, well, actually, the original thought of the sermon goes back quite a while. starting off actually right at the beginning of the year when I was doing a youth talk actually, and I thought, I had a sermon coming up, and I thought I would reuse the idea.
I remember that.
Creative business, it always helps to reuse good ideas.
This is true.
So I did that, and I sort of like chucked. I guess I refocused it, made it into a sermon in that sense. It's a different kind of presentation, so you have to change things here and there. But yeah, added more research into it, some more thoughts. I read over the chapter again and the story, and just added a few more things, and pretty much just combined it all together into the sermon that you guys hopefully have watched so far. So yeah.
Awesome. And I'm assuming that your end goal was really just to challenge people to go and step out of their comfort zones and to feel that courage that comes with trusting God and knowing that, whatever we do, if it's God's will and we're going where He calls, that He's going to do it. And I think you effectively got that message across. Yeah, that was
definitely the message that came across.
Definitely, yeah. That's definitely what I was aiming for.
Great.
Awesome.
So, yeah,
you did a good job.
All right, then. Let's get right into the main meat of the podcast, the cutting room floor.
Ooh.
Michael, what is the cutting room floor?
Okay, well, the cutting room floor is the segment where we discuss the parts of the sermon that didn't make it into the final product.
Awesome. All right, Mr. Marks, lead us through. What didn't quite make it in?
Yeah, well, if you remember from my sermon, I mentioned that there was actually a lot in this story. And when I said that, I really meant it, because there is so much. It's incredible. Even specifically just on comfort zones. And I kind of want to look through a couple of the verses again today, bring out some more things about comfort zones, and yeah, hopefully you guys find a blessing. So the first thing I want to look at is in the chapter, the same story, but it's Matthew chapter 14, verse 29. So I'll read that out for you guys, and then we'll get into it. So yeah, it says this. So he said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Now, I just want to focus on this one word, come. In my experience, and I'm sure probably yours as well, when God is calling us to do something out of our comfort zones, so often we want a sermon telling us that this is what we should be doing. Mm-hmm. We just want something that covers every detail and just removes every little glimpse and smither of doubt and discouragement and whatever it is. But I find it really interesting that in this, Jesus doesn't do any of that. All he says is come. And I find that really interesting. And it's not much, but in my personal opinion, Jesus leaves this really for our benefit. It leaves an element of trust. It leaves an element of faith, I believe. And really, if Jesus says come, I think it's enough, to be honest. If Jesus says that one unambiguous word with to be honest, come doesn't leave any room for doubt. If God says come,
it's kind of a command, isn't it?
And it's not like it's up for interpretation either.
No.
It's a direct command.
It is, yeah.
Pretty much. So it may not be much, but with Jesus, I think it's plenty enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my first point. The next point I want to get into is found in verses 30 and 31. So yeah, we'll read that out.
Sure. Awesome. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him, and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?"
Right, yeah. So a few things in this. I really like how the Bible says Peter began to sink. Began to sink. So imagine, I'm sure you've done this, you've jumped into a pool. When you jump into the pool, do you sort of like gradually go down? Or is it straight down?
It's pretty sudden,
Especially if you jump in.
Yeah.
Exactly. So in Peter's scenario, it's interesting. I don't know if this is... the Bible doesn't give us the details, but Peter began to sink. So it tells me when we're out of our comfort zones and we do fall, as I mentioned from time to time in my sermon, God doesn't let us sink. He doesn't let us go all the way down, and not instantaneously anyway. It's almost like God was miraculously letting Peter fall down slowly, if that kind of makes sense. So God will never let us go the full way. He'll always get to us in the nick of time. I find that encouraging. Yeah. So the next point I wanted to discuss is, when Jesus rescued Peter. So I think it's interesting that Peter had to call out first. Yeah, Jesus was there. ready and willing to rescue him. But it wasn't Peter cried out, sorry, Lord, save me, that he actually grabbed down and picked Peter up. So I think in this, it teaches us a lesson. Sometimes we need to call out for Jesus for help.
Yeah.
God doesn't want us to suffer through the storm. God doesn't want us to drown. And I don't think he will. But I think it's also very important that we acknowledge that we need help.
Yeah.
We acknowledge and call out to Jesus. And then, as the Bible says, immediately Jesus put his hand down and picked up Peter. So I think that's quite interesting as well.
And I think if you look into it as well, Jesus only comes to Peter after Peter has called for help.
That's right.
Peter's not sinking and then Jesus comes up and grabs him. And looking at that within a wider context, in the fact that, we cry out to Jesus when we're in need and when we need his help. Jesus isn't going to, come and grab you without you ever asking for the help.
That's right.
Jesus is going to ask. He's going to be there when you need him, but he's also not going to force you to do it either.
That's right. He's never going to impose on our free will.
Yeah,
Exactly.
if you don't want help, he's not going to come after you. He's not going to say, well, too bad, so sad. He's going to be there when you ask him, but he's also not going to impede on that free will. And I think that shows the love of God on both sides, regardless of the consequent actions of our decisions. There's that love on either side.
Yeah, man, that is so true. Yeah. And so, there's another, actually, a little part I want to look at in a couple of verses. Verse 22, verse 27, and verse 31. It's kind of like a theme that you read throughout this story. I hope you find it interesting.
Sure. Verse 22 says, "Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away." Have you got 27?
Yeah. "But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, 'Be of good cheer, it is I. Do not be afraid.'"
And 31, "And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, 'O ye of little faith, why did you doubt?'"
So I think it's interesting. If you picked up on the word that was repeated 3 times, it's immediately. Now, it's interesting. Jesus immediately, what does he do? He immediately commands. He commands the disciples to go on the boat and leave. He does that immediately. He immediately encourages. And the disciples thought he was a ghost. He goes up to them and says, "You know what? It's me, guys. Don't have to be afraid. It's me." And then he immediately rescues Peter. And it's interesting because the one thing he doesn't do immediately is confirm Peter's call.
Yeah.
So when he says come, it doesn't say immediately. And I think that's interesting, to be honest. There's a few reasons why. Mr. Peterson, I think you had a thought on this.
I'm not sure how much more in depth I can go there, but I think it is interesting that, it says Peter comes out right after Jesus has called him, and then it's, immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him. It's as though, God's not going to wait around and mill around to take his time. If one of his children calls out to him, like any father, I mean, if a kid was out on the road and is calling out for their dad to save them, you think the dad's going to go, "Oh, hang on, I'm cooking," or "Hang on, I just need to do my hair before I come out and get you." The dad's going to run out straight away and save the child. He's going to stretch out his hand immediately and save the child. I think that's a really cool promise that God gives us, and it should assure us when we go out of our comfort zones. It should be a comforting thought that all we need to do is ask for that help in prayer, and God will come and help us immediately.
Exactly. And we've read, he does it all throughout the story, which is interesting. I guess bringing it to the point, except confirming. I was wondering, why would God do all of these things immediately except confirm? I think there's maybe 2 reasons. Pick and choose. But these are the ones that I thought of. So sometimes maybe Jesus doesn't give confirmation immediately. Sometimes maybe he wants to leave us to trust in him a little bit, to have a bit of faith. And when he's calling us out of the boat, maybe he doesn't want us to go out immediately. that's a possibility. Another reason could be, regardless of how immediate Jesus wanted Peter to get out of the boat, maybe it was just up to Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Mr. Peterson had that thought, actually. So,
I'm not sure, did I?
yeah. But anyway, that's interesting, I find.
Awesome.
So yeah, the next verse is found in chapter 14, obviously, but verse 30. And could we also look up Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 18?
Sure, I've got Proverbs.
Matthew?
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, verse 30, it says this. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Lord, save me.
And Proverbs
Yeah.
says, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall.
Yeah. Now, this isn't something explicitly mentioned in the chapter, but I think it's curious, and as you probably heard in my sermon, highly likely that a bit of pride could be wrapped up in this whole incident with Peter. I mean, if you were walking in water, do you think that you would not be proud?
Yeah.
I mean,
I can see that quickly going to your head.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, we as humans, when we walk out on a lake, what happens? Do we actually just like walk and not sink? Or do we walk and go deeper and deeper and deeper and
That's
deeper?
right.
Yeah, it's a natural thing to sink. And Peter in this position, as we said, yeah, he's probably pretty proud.
Defying physics, that's right.
Yes. This is true. So yeah, but going back to that verse as well, a pride cometh before a fall, essentially. A haughty spirit before a fall, but yeah, pride before destruction. But yeah, it's interesting. To me, it focuses my direction straight on Peter's experience. So Peter possibly had some pride, and what did he do?
Well, he fell.
He
He
fell.
started to.
He sank, exactly.
I think you're probably onto something as well, because as you read the verses a bit more in depth, it says, when he saw that the wind was boisterous, indicating that he was no longer looking at Jesus, he walked on the water to go to Jesus, is what it says in verse 29, and then it says in 30, he saw the wind and he was boisterous, and then he was afraid, and then he began to sink.
That's right.
And I think there might be a link there, because once he took his eyes off Jesus, he may have started to do it in his own power. And I think that might even be confirmed in 31, when it says, O ye of little faith, why did you doubt? If I was relying on my ability to go across the waves, I would have a lot of doubt. And we know to begin with that when he had his faith on Jesus and his focus and his eyes were set on Jesus, he didn't have that problem of doubt. It was only when he started seeing the waves and started seeing the problems surrounding him that this problem began to come up and arise.
That's right.
I think you're onto something there for
It
sure.
reminds me of that song, Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus, where you're looking at Jesus, and then no matter what's around you, you don't notice it, you can't see it, but then as soon as you take your eyes off Jesus, it all becomes real.
Yeah.
It becomes evident.
Yeah.
Very good. So yeah, let's see. The next verse I want to look at is verse 31.
Awesome. And we're going to be very familiar with these verses by the time we're done.
We're going to
I think this is
inside and out.
third time running, but it's always good to reread.
Great.
And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, O ye of little faith, why did you doubt?
Okay, now just reading over this at a glance, Peter sank. Of course he had little faith. But I think we missed the point that Peter actually had the faith to walk on water.
In the first place.
Okay. So if this was me, I don't think I would have this faith. I would consider myself so little faith. But Peter has the faith apparently to walk on water, and yet Jesus says, "O man of little faith." That is interesting, isn't it? I'm like, what? Like sometimes I don't think I have the faith to walk on land. Let alone water. So, oh man, what do I do with this? And I was thinking about this, and I had a thought. Maybe it's irrelevant whether we're walking on land or walking on water. Whatever it is, we need to keep our eyes on Jesus.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, because if you think about it, comfort zones are quite different for different people. Some people may find public speaking, for example, a hard thing to do. Some people may find doing exams a hard thing to do. but the person who finds the exam hard may find public speaking easy. Like, it just depends. So really, whatever it is, whatever our personal walking in water experience is, we need to keep our eyes on Jesus.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I think it's irrelevant. If we fall, whatever that thing is outside of our comfort zones, we are lacking in faith, essentially. But the thing is, and the point I make in the sermon is, Peter still was lacking in faith. Peter still doubted, but he still walked on the water.
Yeah.
Jesus still caught him out. And I don't think that lack of faith or doubt should stop us from doing that.
Yeah, that's true. I think you're right in that a lot of people forget the part where he did walk on the water.
Yeah.
We just remember the part where, hey, guess what? You
failed. We do. We put a lot of emphasis on that part, and we forget that he actually took the first step.
Yeah,
took it out of the boat.
He did, and
none of the other disciples did.
None of the other disciples did. It was just Peter. And can you really... you can't really fault him in that first verse.
No,
where he's taking that first step. Not to begin with, you can't really. But I think if we just keep procrastinating and we don't go out and we don't make that first step in the boat, well, we're never going to succeed. But you might not never fail, but you will never also succeed and get to that place where God wants you to be. And I'm pretty sure, I think we'd all be confident in saying, we're all going to have some falls in life. I wouldn't say that's the bigger problem. The bigger problem is, do we or do we not call out to Jesus for that help? That's the real problem, and that's where the real decision lies.
Definitely.
Are you going to get back up from that failure and continue to push through that uncomfortable zone and get through it?
And that point links back to the point you made before about Jesus, who does everything immediately. Jesus doesn't procrastinate, he doesn't put things off.
Yeah.
He just does it straight away.
Yeah.
And we need to have that same, mindset.
Yeah.
Definitely.
For sure.
So yeah, our next point is in verse 33. Now, have we read verse 33 yet?
You know what? I don't think we have.
No, I don't think we have.
This is new.
Verse 33 says, "Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, 'Truly you are the Son of God.'"
Cool. Also, if we just quickly skip up to verse 32 as well, and it says, when they got into the boat, the wind ceased.
Oh, yes, that's an important point.
So yeah, I think it's interesting that all throughout the Bible, God never stops the storm. He always gets us through the storm.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. When Peter sank, God could have stopped the storm and said, "Okay, Peter, the storm stopped. You can swim, right? You're a fisherman. Just swim back to the boat. You'll be okay." but he didn't, did he? Like, he picked Peter up, and then Peter walked back on water, assumingly, back to the boat, while the storm was still going. Because it wasn't until they hopped in the boat that the storm left.
Yeah.
The storm ceased. So sometimes when we fall, as we will most likely during the storm, God, don't expect the storm to stop, essentially.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really matter because God picks us up and he gets us through. So don't expect the storm to stop. Expect God to get you through the storm, essentially is the point.
I think I might know why God wants to keep us through the storm as opposed to getting out. Does it have something to do with James chapter 1, Mr. Marks?
It might.
Oh, I'm onto it.
You got some inside knowledge.
Yeah.
Inside knowledge.
Should we go there right now?
Mate, I'm already there. What are you guys doing?
Go ahead and read.
I'll do it. We're in James chapter 1 and reading from verses 2 and 3. "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience."
Exactly. I thought this was just like a nice segue.
Yeah.
Essentially, why does God not stop the storm? Because the storm actually grows us. It actually, increases our faith, increases our trust in God, and it tests us. I'm sure when people are going through something they're not expecting, when they get a fright, or when they're just really unexpected and something comes up, you really see their true colours, don't you? In the heat of the moment, their true character comes through.
Yeah.
And tests and storms really bring that out. It makes us realise our faults, that we really need God in really everything. And in that sense, we can pray to God, ask Him to change us, and He will.
Yeah.
It's a growing experience, and I think that's awesome.
I like how it talks about, the testing of your faith produces patience, or the word can also be pretty easily replaced by saying endurance or perseverance. And then it says, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and will be given to him. So I like this. It goes, through trials we gain perseverance, and through that perseverance we gain wisdom, and then ask of God for that wisdom. And I like this, but let him ask in faith with no doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind, which kind of links right back to that analogy.
Yeah, man, I love it. You
got to get through the storm, and you got to ask God to help you get through it. And it's talking a bit more specifically here that growth of character that comes through getting through trials in our life will give us wisdom, and we need only to ask for God to impart that wisdom as well. And we can't be double-minded about it.
Man, I love it. I love it. Awesome. Next verse, actually, I think, just to give us a little break, it's not actually in Matthew.
Hey.
It's in 1 Corinthians, actually. So it's 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 27. And it says this, but God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things which are mighty. Very, very interesting, isn't it? It's, to be honest, I find it quite encouraging. I don't really consider myself extremely wise or extremely mighty, but it's okay, because God often doesn't use his people. I sort of cover this a little bit in my sermon, so I won't go into too much depth. But yeah, it's interesting. All throughout the Bible, you'll find God uses these, really these weak people, these weak individuals, to do amazing things. The Bible isn't a story. The Bible isn't stories about great men. It's about men who do great things through the power of God. And you just find this all throughout the Bible. Like Moses, for example, a very unlikely leader. He described himself as the meekest of all men. He stutters, or is slow of speech. And yet God uses him to be one of the most effective and powerful leaders in the whole Bible. It's crazy. And Gideon, for example, that shy little guy hiding away. And yet God, look how God used him to defeat the Midianites.
I think the key is that the people who God chooses are often perceived as weak by societal values. Societally and culturally, Moses was slow of speech. I wouldn't send a guy who's slow of speech to, address an official dignitary of a nation who holds the salvation of an entire nation of people in their hands. That typically wouldn't be my first person to go to. Or with Gideon, no military background, no military training. He really should... He has no qualifications for what he's about to do. But the qualifications was not with the cultural and societal values that we look upon. Or even David, when Samuel goes to all the sons of Jesse, he's looking at all the tall, strong guys. And where's David? He's off with taking care of the sheep. And I think that's the crux when Samuel says, man looks on the outside,
appearance, that's right,
but God looks inside. And that's the thing. God looks at people's spiritual qualifications. Yes. Moses and Gideon and David, I reckon what they all had in mind what they all had in common was that they were trusting in God. They were humble enough to accept guidance and wisdom from God. Yes. And they were happy to go outside of those comfort zones that they had, because they knew where God was taking them. That's right. They had trust in God's plan. They weren't trying to do their own thing. Someone who probably had a military background at the Battle of 300 probably would have said, God, this isn't a great plan. Yeah. You want to cut down our army to 300? Exactly. This is not going to work. Whereas Gideon, person who was unqualified, he just goes, you tell me what to do.
And I'll do it.
Because I have no idea.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And I suppose that comes down to, again, us hearing that appeal that God gives us. He just says one word, come with me and be fishers of men, and that's up to us whether we agree to that. that request or not.
Great thought. So yeah, it's slightly going off track a little bit, but I think it's a cool verse nonetheless. It's found in Proverbs, and it's Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 6, I believe.
Awesome. All right. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Or I know some of the translations will say he will make your path straight. So
awesome. So yeah, it's a little bit of a segue, but departure. That's what I meant.
Opposite of a segue. Anti-segue.
That's right.
That's it. But yeah. Anyways, I think it's a really cool verse. I think with comfort zones, it sort of ties in because it's to do with God's calling, to do with God's will in your lives. But here it says it plainly: acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will direct your paths. So, what does it mean to acknowledge him? Acknowledge him in all your ways. I think it really comes down to asking God for him to use your life, to use your, pretty much submitting your will to him, and then God will direct your paths.
Yeah.
And it's not just in one thing, in all things. Like, I don't know, but I feel like if we are to walk on water, if we are to do these incredible things to God, we have to acknowledge him in everything.
Yeah.
We have to submit our wills to him. I think you even covered this in your last point, but yeah, I think that's really encouraging. So
Sure.
yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Where are we headed next, Mr. Marks?
Yes. Next verse is Philippians 4:13.
And this one's
Very, very well known.
very well known, very popular.
Yes.
I think we've got it hanging up on our wall at home. It says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me."
Perfect.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We don't really need to cover it that much.
God is giving us the strength to step out of our comfort zones.
Yeah.
If we trust in him, we can do it
Exactly.
with his help.
So yeah, enough said.
I think that's,
So yeah.
And carrying on with that, it looks like Zechariah 4:6 says, "Not by might or by power, but by my spirit."
I like this.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah, it connects well with the Philippians one as
That's
well.
right. It's saying it's Christ. It's not yourself. You can't do it in your own power.
Yeah.
Like walking in water. It's something that defies physics.
It does.
Yeah.
It's unnatural.
It's supernatural.
And again, as soon as Peter starts to do it in his own strength,
Exactly.
down he goes.
Yeah. God is the one that gets us through.
Yeah.
So, I like. There's also an analogy I was going to add into the sermon. It's really quite good, but for time, I couldn't add it in. It's a shame. But comfort zones can be like a pool. A cold pool at a water park or maybe even the beach.
Yeah.
So essentially, when you go up to a cold pool, what do? Most people would kind of like dip their feet in. Oh, it's cold! It's cold!
Yeah.
And then just run away.
That's right.
Just run away.
Or people try to do the really slow wade in. They get a little bit and then it gets up to like their tummy and they go, no, man, no. Too cold.
Exactly. So I think this relates to Peter's experience a little bit. I mentioned in the sermon that, if it was me, I would kind of like do the wade in thing. I would like dip my foot in. I was like, oh, I don't know about this, and sort of come back out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I imagine the story, Peter just like jumping out of the boat. And I think sometimes with our comfort zones, we have to do that. We can't, in this sense, we can't overthink it. Obviously, it's something that's going to be challenging. In Peter's case, unnatural and something defying physics. So really, you can't think about it too much. You just have to trust God and just jump into the pool. And once you do that, the pool's not so bad. The pool's not as cold as if you wade in.
That's the interesting thing about comfort zones. Once you do something that's... once you do something that's outside your comfort zone, a lot of the time that new experience becomes within your comfort zone.
That's right.
For example, I've been preaching sermons for quite a few years now. I personally don't really get nervous. There are a lot of things that can get me nervous, but for some reason, public speaking really hasn't been one of them. It's kind of become part of my comfort zone now. I have a lot of other areas where I'm terrified to do certain things. But yeah, that's just, I suppose, one example of how when we do go out in faith, we kind of broaden our horizons into what we can do. And I think that's, again, that idea of that God knows more about what we can do and who we are than we really know.
Yeah, that's so true.
We just need to trust in God to take us down that path. And I think it'll be one of those times where you look back, and a lot of people use this analogy for bad things. Oh, I just got down the path and how did I get here?
Yeah.
Now I'm stuck. But in this case, it's a good example. People go, how did I get here? You know, I was here, and look how far God has taken me, and look at the, you know, the spiritual success that's been able to come as a result of just trusting in God and allowing His Holy Spirit to work through us.
That's right. And the further you go and the more you step out of your comfort zone, the easier it gets. Like you said, I think you said that already.
Yeah.
I guess in that sense, comfort zones aren't really that bad. You just have to expand them.
Yeah, you do.
That's right, you do.
It's true.
Bigger and bigger. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. Yeah, there's this quote by an unknown. I personally, in my opinion, I think a lot of good quotes are by unknown people. But it says this: "A ship in a harbour is safe, but that is not what a ship is made for." I think, yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So God doesn't want us to stay in the boat. God wants us to get out of the boat. You know, a ship is not. Our ship is safe in the harbour. Not much is going to get it. There's protection against the wind, against elements, against waves, and all that sort of stuff. But that's not what a ship is made for. It's made to sail.
Yeah,
that's right. And a modern example could be a car is safe in the garage. It's not what the car's made for, and that's not what you want your car to. That's not what you want the car's life experience to be. You want it to be
cooped up in the garage.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's not why you buy a car. You don't buy a car to have it sit there all day. You don't buy a boat to have it sit in the harbour.
Exactly.
And I suppose that's the real reason no one wants to go out of their comfort zones is the fear of failure and that element of risk. Do you want to make that risk and potentially risk failure? But a lot of people also don't think there's also the possibility for a success.
Sorry, keep going.
Oh, and if you, I feel like I might be just stealing your point. I think we're thinking the same thing.
I think we are.
But if we have God,
you're thinking the same thing.
Your possibility of success
is
amplified tenfold.
Yes.
If it's God's will for something to happen, there really is no risk of failure, is there?
So true.
But it's just our little human minds. I mean...
we can't see the big picture.
We can't see the big picture.
Yeah.
We've got this tiny little picture and we go, but God, can't you see how this is going to go wrong? When God's got this big picture and He's just going, just walk out. Just walk out. And
it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Just trust me.
So, man, great point. So, this is...
It's my favourite part, Godfrey.
What is this?
It's a bonus round.
Bonus round.
Oh, man.
Here we go.
Let's go.
So, yeah, things not really relevant to comfort zones, but really cool things.
Trivia, almost.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Bonus, whatever. What's the fancy term for brackets again?
Parentheses.
Parentheses.
That's it.
Parentheses trivia round. There we go.
I like it. So, yeah. This is found in chapter 14, verse 26.
Back in Matthew.
Sure, let's go back
but
to Matthew.
I don't think it's a verse we've read.
Oh, okay. Well, here we go.
Some new content. Here we go.
Hopefully.
Verse 26. And when the disciples saw Him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It's a ghost," and they cried out for fear.
Interesting, isn't it? Like the disciples, obviously, hence the name disciples, were spending a lot of time near Jesus. And Jesus comes up to them walking on the water, and they think it's a ghost.
Yeah.
Like, how can you spend that much time with someone who does that many miracles, i.e. the feeding of the 5,000, something very divine, and yet, like, honestly, who else would you think would be walking on water except Jesus? But I think it's interesting.
Yeah, that's
Definitely
true.
Interesting.
But yeah, I guess we also have to give the disciples a little bit of slack in this situation as well. I mean... Yeah,
they probably weren't thinking straight considering the storm, so...
Exactly.
Right. And did you talk about the time of day? I think you said it was early in the morning.
So probably dark, yeah.
They really wouldn't have expected anything like that to happen.
And
exactly.
If a ghost's going to come, nighttime.
I think that's a good time.
Nighttime's probably a good time.
Foggy, you've got the storm happening.
I'm not a theologian when it comes to Jewish folklore and customs, but I'm guessing that's kind of a general thing that cultures sort of believe in.
And also, this miracle, wasn't this one of Jesus' biggest miracles up into... I mean, obviously, his resurrection was his biggest miracle, but up until this point, I don't think they would have seen anything quite like this.
Probably smaller scale stuff, and probably something that a prophet could do, but probably not something considered divine,
Yes,
which
that's right.
leads into our it looks like our last verse.
Perfect.
Ho-ho.
I mean, perfect that it leads into it.
Here we go. Verse 33.
Sure.
Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God."
Yes.
I think, incredible. For homework, go up and look some texts about walking on water. I was reading some commentary about this. Actually, walking on water is actually a very divine act. The Jews regarded this act as something only God can do. Couple of verses that you guys can look up. There's a few here. Job 9:8, Psalm 77 verse 19, and Habakkuk 3:15. So, look those up. It's quite interesting.
Awesome. Well, there we go. That concludes the cutting room floor for today. Mr. Marks, do you have any recommended readings or anything you'd suggest the folks at home have a look at?
Yes, I do. I research a lot of things, but two things I would highly recommend is actually the commentary on this chapter by John Calvin. It's actually very interesting.
Very nice.
And the book Desire of Ages, specifically the chapter on Peter's walking water experience. I believe it's called A Night on the Lake. So yeah,
awesome.
Very good things.
All right, looks like you guys have some extra reading you can do at home if you'd like to learn a little bit more about this topic. Mr. Michael Godfrey, where can these people find you?
Yes, okay, well, I don't have a dedicated YouTube channel for anything that I've done as of yet because I haven't uploaded a sermon. So that's coming soon, and I'll let you know in the next After Sermon podcast. I'll give you more information about that.
Awesome. And you can find me on the link below, if you remember from last week's podcast there as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. And you guys know you're probably either viewing this on my channel or on the After Sermon podcast channel, maybe, if it's up, who knows. But you'll find a link below to something of mine, and you'll be able to get to my YouTube channel from there. Well, that concludes today's podcast.
And make sure to come back on December 18th, where we'll have a new sermon and a new episode of the After Sermon podcast.
And it won't be any normal episode, no. Next week will be our Christmas Spectacular. Woo!
Yes.
Awesome. So we're looking forward to doing that very special episode with you guys. And with that said, have a good one and good night.